I arrived late on Christmas Eve, the wind slicing through my coat as I stepped onto the porch of the house I once called home. Vermont had laid down a thick, white hush over the town, muffling the world in a way that made everything feel more distant, maybe fitting, considering how far I felt from the people waiting inside. When I entered, no one looked up right away. My mother Victoria was arranging candles along the windowsill. Logan, my younger brother, was lounging barefoot with a glass of wine, his laughter filling the room like he owned it. And in a way, he did. Every corner of that house was a monument to his life. I brushed off the snow, hung my coat on the familiar hook by the door, and turned toward the fireplace, and that's when I saw it. A family portrait, professionally framed, large and proud, hung above the hearth. Logan, front and center, with that staged but charming grin he's perfected for his photography brand. Alicia, my mother's older sister, but practically my second mother, after Victoria began to fade, emotionally stood beside him in a tailored coat. Victoria herself was in red, smiling gently, like she hadn't spent the last decade brushing me to the margins. And I was gone, not off to the side, not blurred in the background, just not there. It wasn't a clumsy mistake. The crop was deliberate, surgical, like I had never existed. I stared for a few seconds, not long enough to register the knot in my stomach, to feel the air go tight in my chest, but not long enough for anyone to notice. Or maybe they did notice and, as always, chose not to speak. "Dinner's almost ready," Victoria called out, her voice soft, familiar in tone but not in spirit. I used to love that voice. Now it sounded like a script. I followed the smell of rosemary into the kitchen. I nodded at Logan. He kissed my cheek without touching it. "You made it," he said, as if I was a guest arriving at his gala. I didn't answer, just gave a small smile, the kind that costs nothing, because it's empty. We sat, we ate, we performed. Victoria asked Logan about his next exhibition. She complimented his skin, twice. Alicia brought up ski plans for the weekend. No one asked where I was living, what I was doing, or even how I got there. I received a mug with a sticker that said, "World's okayest son." I'm not sure if it was meant to be ironic, or maybe I am. After dessert, I excused myself early and went upstairs, to the guest room. Not my room, just the one with the lamp that buzzed and the sheets that smelled like cardboard. I sat on the edge of the bed and reached for my bag. The envelope was still there, heavy, ivory, sealed. I had planned to wait until morning, but after seeing that photo, I knew I wouldn't. That night, the house breathed around me. The floorboards creaked with the same rhythm they always had. Somewhere down the hall, Victoria's voice murmured something about polishing the good silver. Logan's laughter followed, easy and careless, like he'd never once known the weight of silence. I stared at the ceiling, counting memories I used to keep close. The night I got into my first choice university, how they said, "We're proud," and then asked if I could defer to help Logan build his portfolio. The time I called, desperate, because I couldn't make rent, and Alicia told me they were saving for Logan's photography trip to Spain. The dinner where I brought someone home, and no one remembered his name. He left early. I didn't blame him. I told myself for years I was just more quiet, less magnetic, the shadow behind the light they preferred. But I wasn't invisible. I was erased. The envelope on the nightstand waited patiently. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands. It had taken me months to collect the documents inside. Months of public records, title searches, archived correspondence, and one very determined lawyer named Miss Harper, someone who knew what it was like to be overlooked and underestimated. The truth sat inside that envelope. My name, legally bound to something I was told never existed. A house, a legacy, my grandfather's will. They had told me he left keepsakes and a little money to help with the funeral. That was it. But the will told a different story. He had left me a property, a quiet rental by the park. It wasn't glamorous, but it was his, and he had meant it for me. Sole beneficiary, full ownership. They'd hidden it, rented it, renovated it, lived off it. While I scraped by, I lay in bed and imagined the photo over the fireplace again. That perfect frame, that tidy lie, the absence of me like a scar they covered with makeup. No, I wouldn't wait for cinnamon rolls and stockings. I wouldn't let them keep scripting the narrative while I stood quietly off stage. Tomorrow, I'd put the envelope on the table and let the silence speak for me. I didn't want a scene. I didn't need one. I just wanted them to see it, to really see me for the first time in years. I woke to the scent of coffee and cinnamon warmth layered over tension. It used to comfort me, back when things were simpler, when this house still felt like it belonged to me in some way. But now it only reminded me of what was rehearsed. Traditions without meaning, meals without substance. Downstairs, Victoria stood in the kitchen, plating scrambled eggs with her usual flair, the same way she did when hosting guests. Alicia was already seated, sipping her usual green tea blend, casually scrolling on her tablet, and Logan, of course, barefoot, grinning, carrying on about luggage weight limits for his trip to Iceland. Or was it Peru? He changed destinations like socks. "Good morning," Victoria said without looking up. "Hope you slept okay in the guest room." I poured myself a cup of coffee. "The mattress has a personality," I said quietly. She laughed, assuming I was joking. I wasn't. We made it through breakfast the same way we always did, carefully choreographed and emotionally sterile. They asked about nothing that mattered. Not my work, not my life. I hadn't lived in the apartment with the creaky stairs in over a year, but that detail was never questioned. Logan talked about his upcoming art series like he was giving a TED Talk, and they applauded him with the same enthusiasm they reserved for celebratory toasts. I didn't speak much, just watched, studied their rhythms. The way Victoria dabbed at the counter, how Alicia fixed her hair in the mirror, how Logan unwrapped his gifts with exaggerated gratitude. A vintage camera, a leather travel journal, a suede backpack. From me, he got nothing, and from them, I got a ceramic mug that said, "You're somebody's favorite son." The irony didn't even sting anymore. It was just predictable. I excused myself after breakfast and went upstairs, not out of tiredness, but to give them time. Let them bask in the comfort of their own story a little longer. Let them keep pretending. When I came back down, the tree had been picked clean. Wrapping paper lay in soft piles, like snowdrifts. Victoria was tidying the hearth. Logan was admiring his new backpack. Alicia was flipping through a cookbook she hadn't gifted herself. I sat quietly, reached into my coat, and placed the envelope beside the half-empty coffee mugs. No one noticed it, at least not right away, until Victoria's hand hovered over it as she reached for a coaster. She picked it up like it was an errant holiday card. "What's this?" she asked, mostly to herself. "That's from me," I said. I didn't raise my voice. Alicia glanced over. "You didn't have to." "I know," I said. "I wanted to." They were listening now. Victoria examined the envelope like it might bite. "Should we open it now?" I shrugged. "I'd prefer you didn't." So, of course, they opened it. She slid her nail under the seal with practiced elegance. Alicia leaned closer. Logan stayed by the fireplace, still absorbed in his own world. The papers unfolded with a slow rustle. Page 1, then page 2. The air shifted. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Alicia leaned in, frowning. Logan glanced up finally, sensing the tension but not understanding it yet. "What is this?" Alicia asked, brows furrowed. No one answered her. Not yet. So I stood, steady, calm. "I thought it was time you knew," I said. "That's Grandpa's will." Victoria looked up slowly. "We've seen his will. We handled the estate." "No," I cut in. "You handled what you told me was the estate. You never showed me the full document. You told me he left us keepsakes and a bit of cash." Alicia blinked rapidly. "There was nothing else." "That's odd," I said, "because the county record office and Miss Harper, my attorney, say otherwise. The property on North Cedar, the one by the park, it was left to me, sole beneficiary. It's in the will." Silence expanded like fog. "That can't be," Victoria started. I turned to Logan. "You used that house for a photo shoot last year, remember? You tagged the location. You called it rustic minimalism with generational vibes. That was my house." He looked stunned. "Wait, your house?" "Yes. And the renovations? Unauthorized. The rent? Illegally collected." I didn't say anything until now, because I needed proof. Now I have it. Victoria placed the pages on the coffee table like they were radioactive. "Ethan, this isn't how families handle things." "Families," the first repeated softly. "You mean the kind that crop one of their own out of a family portrait?" Alicia's voice dropped, low and urgent. "We didn't think you'd want the responsibility. You've always been so far away." "I was far away," I said, "because you made it clear I wasn't part of this anymore." Logan stood now, arms crossed, defensive. "You're doing this just to punish us." "No," I replied. "I'm doing this because it's mine." Victoria stepped forward, her voice trembling now. "We depended on that income. Then you shouldn't have stolen it," I said. "This isn't revenge. It's reclamation." They didn't speak, just stared. Logan looked like he'd just been slapped. Alicia's lips were pressed so tightly her mouth disappeared. Victoria looked like she wanted to cry but couldn't remember how. I picked up my coat. "If you leave now," Alicia said quietly, "don't expect to come back." I paused, hand on the doorknob. Then I turned to face them one last time. I think that's the first honest thing anyone said all day. And then I left. Outside, the snow was falling again, soft and steady. My breath clouded the air, and the cold bit at my cheeks, but it felt clean, cleansing, almost. I got in the car, started the engine, and drove. No anger, no regret, just the stillness that comes from finally being seen, even if only by yourself. 3 weeks passed before I heard anything. The first message came through on a Monday evening. It was from Victoria, short, cautious, typed like she'd rewritten it multiple times before pressing send. "Hi, Ethan. We've been talking and think there's been a misunderstanding. Can we chat sometime this week? Hope you're well. Love you." No punctuation after love you, just those words, dangling awkwardly like a misplaced sentiment. I didn't reply. 2 days later came another. "Please don't let this one thing ruin everything. Logan is very upset. Alicia's trying to stay calm, but you know how she gets when she feels blindsided." Blindsided. That word stuck with me for a while. Not betrayed, not exposed, just caught off guard, as if their only mistake was failing to predict my timing. I didn't respond to that one either. Then came a voicemail from Alicia. I didn't listen, just stared at the notification until it faded into the background of my screen. The last time she called me kiddo, it was to explain why I wasn't included in the family trust. "You're the independent one," she'd said. "You always figure things out." Translation: we knew you wouldn't fight us on it, and maybe they were right. Back then, I wouldn't have, but now? I had no interest in explanations built on omissions, no appetite for revisionist kindness. Then Logan messaged, "So you really think this makes you better than us?" No greeting, no punctuation, just that flat challenge, like a shove in the hallway. A day later, another text followed. "Mom and Alicia are stressed. They're thinking about selling the condo. That what you wanted? Congrats." That one, I read twice, not because it hurt, but because it told me something they hadn't said out loud. The house I reclaimed wasn't just a memory. It had been the foundation of everything. The rent from the 3 units, it covered Victoria's mortgage payments, Alicia's travel, Logan's apartment in the city. It helped fund the holidays, the birthday cruises, the renovations they posted online with hashtags like #blessed and #modern farmhouse vibes. Taking back that house pulled the first thread. Now the seams were loosening, and I hadn't even asked for back rent. Not yet. By early spring, whispers began to filter back through mutual acquaintances. Clara, our old neighbor, ran into me at the bookstore downtown. She'd always been kind, the type to remember birthdays and send handmade cards. "I hear your family's had a rough go of it," she said, placing a hand gently on my arm. "You still managing that place over on North Cedar?" I nodded. "Yeah, still mine." She didn't press, just smiled. "You look good, like you're sleeping better." I was, for the first time in years. A month later, I learned through a friend that Alicia had picked up part-time hours at a boutique downtown. The kind of place she used to shop at: cashmere scarves, curated candles, monogrammed totes. Now she rang them up for influencers and tourists. Probably told herself it was temporary. Victoria had started consulting again. That meant calling old clients, offering advice no one had asked for, hoping someone still owed her a favor. Logan was back living at home. His downtown apartment? Too expensive without the family subsidy. His art collective had dissolved or imploded, depending on who you asked. He launched a GoFundMe for a new creative rebirth. It raised $83. 2 of those dollars came from someone I vaguely remembered dating in college. That detail made me laugh, unexpectedly. Not cruelly, just with recognition. The kind of laugh you let slip when the absurdity finally becomes clear. Meanwhile, I got to work on the house. My house. It was in rough shape at first. Dust in the corners, peeling paint, fixtures left half installed by whoever had last renovated it. But the bones were good, solid. I hired a small team to help. A contractor, a painter, someone who specialized in old windows. I cleared out the furniture they had stored there, donated most of it. I kept one piece, a navy blue armchair I remembered from childhood. It was the only item that didn't feel like it came with strings attached. The tenants were kind. One left a note taped to my door after I lowered their rent. "You're the first landlord who's ever treated us like human beings. Thank you." I stood there for a long time after reading that. Longer than I probably should have. It wasn't the validation I'd needed, but it was the first time in years someone had seen me as something more than a placeholder, a name in a ledger, a liability to manage, and that meant something. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It wasn't a void I was desperate to fill. It became space, room to breathe, to move, to begin again without the weight of someone else's edits on my story. I stopped checking my phone for apologies that wouldn't come. I stopped bracing for guilt, disguised as affection. I started sleeping through the night, and when I woke up, I wasn't waiting for them anymore. It was late summer when the letter arrived. Not a text, not an email. A letter handwritten in Victoria's looping script, sealed with a faded floral sticker. No return address. I stood by the mailbox for a long time, envelope in hand, the warm air pressing gently against my skin, cicadas humming like a slow reminder that time moves on with or without us. I didn't open it right away. Eventually, I sat by the window in the my living room, and carefully peeled it open. Her scent drifted out faintly, something floral and familiar, the same perfume that clung to her scarves growing up. 2 pages, neatly written, apologetic in tone, if not in substance. We didn't know. It wasn't intentional. We only wanted what was best for everyone. And then the line that stayed with me longer than I expected. "You've always been so strong. We didn't realize you needed anything from us." That was the shape of it, wasn't it? That quiet, convenient story. They told themselves strength as a reason to neglect, independence as an excuse for absence. It wasn't cruelty. Not exactly. It was erasure dressed up as praise. The letter ended with, "We hope someday you'll come home. Maybe we can start over. Maybe we can be a family again." There was no mention of the house, no acknowledgement of the years of stolen rent, of decisions made without me, of a legacy nearly lost. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I didn't throw it away, but I didn't answer either. That was the last time she reached out directly. Years passed. Once in a while, a message would trickle through forwarded through an old family friend, a distant cousin, a Christmas card one year that said, "Thinking of you. Hope you're well." No return address. I didn't reply. And yet, I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. The fire had burned itself out long ago. What was left wasn't bitterness. It was clarity. The house on North Cedar became mine in every sense of the word. I lived in it not because I had nowhere else to go, not out of spite, but because it was quiet, peaceful, and mine. I repainted the front porch, replaced the mailbox, tended the garden in the back, where wild mint grew between the stones. I filled the windowsills with plants that needed light, and not much else resilient things that knew how to thrive without too much attention. Inside, I kept the navy blue chair by the front window. On the mantel above it, there's a photo now, just me, standing on the porch, holding the keys, sunlight at my back. No one had to be cropped out of that picture. No one else needed to be there at all. I saw Clara again last month, at the local market. She was picking out tomatoes and called my name with the warmth of someone who never needed an apology to offer kindness. "You still living in the Cedar house?" she asked. "I am." She nodded slowly, eyes soft. "Well, you look good, Ethan. I'm glad." And I am. Not because I won, not because I reclaimed what was mine, but because I stopped trying to fit into a version of family that required me to disappear in order to belong. There was no final confrontation, no dramatic showdown, just a series of quiet decisions that, together, built a new life. I donated the last of the rent records to Miss Harper's office. She had asked if I wanted to pursue restitution, back payment, even press charges. I told her no. It wasn't that they didn't deserve consequences. It's that I didn't need them anymore. My peace didn't require their punishment. Sometimes I pass by the old cafe where Alicia used to take meetings. It's a yoga studio now. The world changes, even when people resist it. Logan still posts online occasionally motivational quotes, vague captions about rising from challenges, side shots of herbal tea and open books. I don't follow him, but people forward things. He's rebuilding, I suppose, or trying to. Victoria still lives in the condo, last I heard. Smaller now. She volunteers at the Historical Society. I think, in her own way, she's trying to preserve something, just not the version of the past that includes me. And that's fine. I stopped waiting for the apology that would make it all make sense, because I don't need it. Some inheritances come in the form of money, houses, jewelry. Some come in the form of lessons, harsh, unrelenting truths that force you to choose between who you are and who they want you to be. I didn't inherit the love I wanted, but I inherited something better: space, stillness. My name finally written in ink instead of pencil. The last snow came early this year. I watched it fall from the front steps, mug in hand, the air sharp and clean. Somewhere behind me, the old radiator hummed. My house, stood solid and warm against the cold. No performances, no expectations, just peace. And that, I've learned, is the kind of inheritance no one can steal. Story 2. I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here we are. My name's Nathan. I'm 34, and until recently, I was married to Erin, 29. We met through a corporate networking event in Chicago almost 6 years ago. Things started as a friendship, office banter, late-night project grinds, drinks after big presentations. It was easy, organic, and over time, that comfort grew into something more. We dated for 3 years, then tied the knot. 2 years married, no major issues, no dramatic fights, no emotional distance. Erin was sharp, warm, and beautiful in the kind of way that made people assume she was out of my league. But somehow she loved me, or so I thought. About 6 months ago, my stepbrother Colin, 28, came to stay with us. Colin's always been erratic, a find-yourself kind of guy, drifting from one gig to another without much follow-through. The latest drama? He got fired for showing up drunk to a Zoom client pitch. Seriously, my dad and Colin's mom, they got married when I was 15, asked if I could let him crash with us in New York while he recalibrated. I wasn't thrilled, but family guilt works wonders, and Erin was surprisingly okay with it. So, Colin moved into our guest room. I laid down some ground rules: no guests, no disruptions, and definitely no treating our home like his personal after-party venue. To my surprise, he complied. For a while at least, Colin would be out most nights and slink back in at dawn, looking like a hungover vampire. But he was polite, made us dinner a couple times, and even helped Erin fix the squeaky cabinet I'd been ignoring for months. Weirdly domestic, not typical Colin. About 2 weeks into his stay, I had a quick work trip to Vegas lined up. Erin and I planned to make a weekend of it, a mini getaway. But she came down with a stomach bug the night before. I offered to reschedule, but she insisted I go. Colin said he'd stay in and take care of her. I was hesitant, but I went. When I got back Saturday morning, Erin was up and moving around. Said she was feeling better. Colin was quieter than usual. Spent more time at home after that. Claimed he was saving money, which sure, fine, but something about it made my skin itch. At first, I chalked it up to post-trip fatigue, but little things started piling up. I came home early one day and found Erin already there, claiming she took a half day for a headache. Another day, I walked in to see her and Colin arriving together. We just bumped into each other outside, she said. I had no hard proof, nothing I could point to and say, this is it. But a gut feeling kept gnawing at me. I asked Colin, casually, how long he planned to stay. Told him it had been good having him, but maybe it was time to get back on his feet. He agreed and said he'd be out by the end of the week. Erin was in the room when I said it. She didn't argue, didn't react at all, just sat there like it wasn't her problem. Colin moved out quietly, no drama, and for a while things went back to normal, almost too normal. I started to convince myself that I'd imagined the whole thing. Then, 2 weeks ago, Erin told me she was pregnant. She was glowing, thrilled, said it was a surprise but a happy accident. I smiled, said all the right things, but inside, my world collapsed. Here's the thing: we'd agreed to wait until she turned 30 to start trying for kids. I'd wanted to start sooner, but I respected her timeline. We were always careful. She couldn't take hormonal birth control, so I never once skipped protection. We were meticulous, no mistakes. And now, she was 2 months pregnant, exactly the time Colin had been living with us. I tried to keep it together. I really did. I wanted to believe it was mine, that the math didn't matter. But the doubt ate at me every waking hour. After a week of sleepless nights, I asked her directly. We were having dinner when I said it. Erin, I need to ask you something important, and I'm sorry, but I need to know. Is the baby mine? She froze, her face drained of color. Then she exploded. She called me paranoid, cruel, disgusting for even asking, said she'd never cheat on me, accused me of being mentally unstable, screamed until her voice broke. I stayed calm, Tried to explain that it wasn't just the timing, it was everything that happened when Colin stayed with us. The weird changes, the subtle shifts. I told her I wanted a paternity test, just for peace of mind, just to be able to move forward. That was the final straw for her. She lost it, told me I was humiliating her, violating her trust. Said she needed time to think. We slept in separate rooms. Days passed in silence. She avoided me entirely. Then one morning I woke up and she was gone. No note, no call, no texts. Nothing. I panicked. Called her friends, her office, her mom. Nobody knew where she was. Even her assistant seemed surprised. Erin had apparently taken personal time off, but hadn't told anyone why. Just when I was about to call the police, she rang. She was fine, she said, annoyed that I'd involved her mother. Told me I was overreacting, said she'd be home tomorrow and hung up. I didn't sleep that night. When she finally came back the next morning, she looked different, almost euphoric. Nate, she said, I fixed it. The baby was destroying us, so I took care of it. I blinked. What do you mean? Took care of it? I got an abortion, she said. Now we don't have to fight anymore. I couldn't speak. My mouth went dry. She looked so calm, so satisfied. It was like I didn't even know who she was anymore. I left without saying a word. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't look back. Just walked out the door and didn't stop until I was standing outside my lawyer's office. That day, walking out of our apartment, I wasn't just leaving my wife. I was leaving behind 6 years of my life. I called my lawyer right away and told her everything. Erin's affair, the pregnancy, the abortion, all of it. I told her I wanted a divorce, and I didn't want Erin touching a dime of mine. Luckily, I owned our apartment long before I met her. That was one less thing to worry about. My lawyer set up a meeting for the next morning, and I checked into a hotel. I turned my phone off for the night. I needed to disappear for just a few hours. The next morning, while waiting in my lawyer's office, I decided to call Colin. I kept it short. I told him I was divorcing Erin and asked if he'd slept with her. There was a long pause, then a quiet, "I'm sorry, man." That's all I needed to hear. I didn't yell. I didn't curse him out. I just hung up and stared at the wall until my lawyer walked in. She was direct, smart, efficient. She told me that if Erin pushed for alimony, we had a solid case against it. Erin made good money herself. Plus, we had evidence, text records, doctor's appointments, timelines that didn't lie. And, more importantly, I had her reaction to the paternity test request. No sane, faithful spouse would have reacted like that. I told my lawyer to proceed aggressively. This wasn't just about the money. It was about principle now. That afternoon, while Erin was still at work, I went back to the apartment, packed up her clothes, toiletries, whatever I could fit into 3 suitcases. Left them outside the door. Called a locksmith and had the locks changed. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want her in our space. Once everything was done, I went back to the hotel. My phone lit up the second I powered it on missed calls, texts, voicemails, all from Erin. I ignored them. Hours passed. Then I got a message from Colin. Apparently, Erin had reached out to him, asking if we'd spoken. He told her I knew everything, that it was over. He said he was sorry again. I didn't bother replying. That night, I finally broke and called Erin's mom. Now, before you think I was just being vindictive, hear me out. Erin's parents are old school Southern, strict, conservative values. They've been bugging us about grandkids since the day we got married. I never told them the real reason we waited because Erin wanted to. I always had her back, even when I didn't agree. But after everything she did, the cheating, the lies, the abortion without a word, I was done protecting her. So I told her mom the truth, all of it. At first, she didn't believe me, but I had receipts. I told her to ask Erin directly. It didn't take long after that. About an hour later, Erin blew up my phone. Angry calls, screaming voicemails, dozens of texts. Accused me of ruining her life. Said her parents were furious and had cut her off. No more inheritance, no more financial support, nothing. She said she had nowhere to go, that she'd lost everything. I told her that wasn't my problem. And I meant it. She called me petty, said I was immature for dragging her parents into it, said I was trying to destroy her. I told her she did that all on her own. Then I hung up. She didn't stop. She kept texting, kept calling, threatening to take me to court and bleed me dry. I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on the next steps. I contacted her assistant and confirmed she was still showing up at work. I asked the assistant not to tell her I'd called, said, I was planning a surprise. Erin still hadn't figured out that I'd already changed the locks. That same day, I met with my lawyer again. Gave her everything, records of the pregnancy, the first OB visit, the positive test, all dated. Screenshots of her text admitting she ended the pregnancy. I also told her what Colin had confessed. I had a solid case, and I was ready to push hard. No alimony, no shared assets, just a clean break. Erin didn't take that well. She refused to cooperate at first, tried to guilt-trip me through messages, told mutual friends I was overreacting, that I was ruining our future over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I wanted to laugh. Eventually, I got a message from Colin again. He said he was willing to testify if needed, that he regretted everything, that he'd blocked Erin on everything, and didn't want anything to do with her anymore. I appreciated the gesture, but I didn't trust him. Still, having his cooperation helped my case. I wasn't about to turn away leverage. I found out from my dad that Colin was broke again, relying on financial help from him. Dad made it clear if Colin made things worse for me, he'd be cut off for good. So Colin was suddenly very cooperative. Funny how money brings out people's honesty. In the weeks that followed, Erin tried every angle. First the guilt, then the gaslighting, then threats. She told me I was ruining her life, that I was taking away everything she'd worked for. I reminded her that I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I didn't throw away our marriage for a fling. That was all her, and now she had to deal with the consequences. After a few months, we finally got her to sit down with her lawyer, and things started to move. Erin still tried to push for alimony, but once her own lawyer saw the mountain of evidence, we had statements, doctor's reports, Colin's texts, he advised her to back down. I offered a fair split of what we owned jointly. She could keep her personal stuff. I'd keep mine. That was it. No extras, no favors. Eventually, she agreed. We signed the divorce papers about 6 months after it all started. It's been 6 months since we finalized the divorce. You'd think after everything, I'd feel lighter, like some weight got lifted off my chest the moment the ink dried. But truth is, it took time. Healing doesn't show up the second you close a chapter. It creeps in, quietly, in small ways. I moved back into my apartment once Erin's things were gone. It didn't feel like home at first. Every room had a memory, her favorite mug still in the back of the cabinet, one of her hairbands behind the couch. Little reminders that used to mean something good. Now they just stung. I got rid of all of it, and I started over. Repainted the walls, got new sheets, rearranged the furniture. Hell, I even bought a few plants. And somehow, those small changes made it easier to breathe. Meanwhile, Erin didn't disappear entirely, not right away. She tried messaging me from burner accounts, tried reaching out through mutual friends, but I stuck to my word. Any communication went through our lawyers. That silence, it became my peace. Colin kept his distance too. My dad told me he'd found a job back in the city and was trying to get his life together. I didn't care. He wasn't part of my life anymore, blood or not. Then, a few weeks ago, my dad called me out of the blue, said he needed to talk. Turns out, Erin and Colin are seeing each other again. Yeah, let that sink in. After everything, after the lies, the pain, the mess, they somehow circled back to each other, like two people crawling through the wreckage they caused, pretending they didn't light the match. My first reaction? Numb. I didn't feel rage, didn't punch a wall. I just sat there, letting it land. Honestly, I shouldn't have been surprised. Maybe they deserve each other. Maybe that's their version of a clean slate. But for me, that was the last nail in the coffin. Whatever trace of doubt I had left, it died right there. My dad said he told Colin he was done with him, that he wanted nothing to do with either of them. I appreciated that. I think he needed to say it out loud as much as I needed to hear it. Since then, things have been steady. Work's been good. I started focusing on my health again, eating better, hitting the gym, sleeping like a human being. I've reconnected with old friends, made new ones too, people who knew me before the mess and stuck around after. I'm not rushing into anything romantic. Not yet. Right now, I'm just learning how to live for myself again, how to trust my own instincts, how to sit with silence and not fear it. But if there's one thing I've taken from all of this, it's this. You can give someone your best, your loyalty, your love, your future. But if they're not ready to respect it, they'll burn it down anyway. And if they do, you walk. Not because you're weak, but because you finally remember who you are when they're not around to dim the light. Erin once told me we were meant to grow old together. Turns out she meant that until someone more exciting came along. But I'm not bitter. I'm not looking for payback. The truth did all the work for me. She lost a marriage, her inheritance, and the respect of everyone who ever trusted her. All I lost was someone who didn't deserve me. If she and Colin want to play house now, that's their business. I'm out of it. For good. So yeah, maybe the story doesn't end with a grand revenge or a viral moment of karma, but it ends with me standing on my own 2 feet, finally at peace. And honestly, that's enough.